This week on Hometown Ghost Stories. Most castles are centuries old and hold intense history, but many also hold dark secrets. That is very much the case with Glamis Castle. A ghostly woman in a gray dress, a card game with the devil himself, and even sightings of what some say is a monster. Join us as we take a closer look at these tales and more from one of the most haunted castles in all of Scotland.
Hometown Ghost Stories contains serious and often distressing events and is not intended for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
They warned him. Oh, they warned him. But Earl Birdie wasn't exactly the listening type. The man was as arrogant as he was drunk, and on this particular night, he was both in abundance. It was a stormy night, the kind where the wind howled through the stone corridors of Glamis Castle, rattling the heavy wooden doors like a thing possessed. The kind of night where the very walls seemed to groan, as if in warning. But Earl Birdie, he wasn't about to be scared off by a little bad weather. You see, it was the Sabbath, and no respectable man would dare play cards on the Lord's Day. But Birdie, who was about as respectable as a rabid dog in a church, bellowed for a deck and someone, anyone, to play against him. When no one dared, he slammed his goblet down and roared,
"Then I'll play the devil himself if I have to."
As soon as the words left his lips, there was a knock at the castle door. It was a heavy, deliberate knock, one that echoed down the candlelit halls and sent the servants scurrying into the shadows. However, one servant did open the door to find a man standing there, dressed in black from head to toe, his face half hidden beneath the brim of a wide hat. His eyes glowed like embers beneath it.
"I hear you're looking for the game,"
the stranger said, his voice as smooth as silk and twice as deadly. And just like that, the door slammed shut behind him. Shortly after, the Earl brought the stranger to his room to play a game of cards. Servants passing by the Earl's room heard the cards shuffle, the coins clatter, and the fire crackle. Then, the voices grew louder. First, it was drunken laughter, and then it was shouting. One servant, a young man who had crept too close to the room, leaned in, pressing his ear against the thick wood of the door. He crouched down and looked through the keyhole. For a moment, all he could see was darkness. But then, suddenly, a blinding light flashed from within. He stumbled back, his hand flying to his eyes. The light was so intense, it burned his vision. When others rushed to his aid, they found him blind, his eyes wide open but unseeing, as if the very light had stolen his sight. As they tried to help the servant, Birdie's angry gaze fell upon them, screaming to vacate the area. The Earl turned back into the room, and his anger quickly turned into fright. His eyes narrowed in confusion when he realized the room had grown silent. The fire had burned low, and the air was unnaturally cold. And then he looked around. The stranger was gone. There was no trace of him. The room was empty, except for the Earl, the cards scattered across the table, and an overturned goblet. The devil, who had just moments before been sitting across from him, had vanished without a trace. Birdie stood frozen, a look of horror slowly creeping across his face. The game was over. The devil was gone. Earl Birdie had lost, but what he had lost, he never told a soul, which was a form of irony. Years passed. The Earl lived out the rest of his life, though his once bold spirit had been stripped of its fire. He was a man marked by something darker, and his face aged prematurely. He died a few years later, a broken man. But that wasn't the end of his tale. From the day of his death, the Earl's soul had been claimed by the devil, and his spirit was bound forever to the room where the game had taken place. To this day, if you wander the halls of Glamis Castle, you might still hear it. The faint shuffle of cards, the low murmur of a voice, deep and mocking. the sounds of coins clinking, the eerie, unearthly laughter and shouting. And if you listen carefully enough, you might even hear the Earl's voice, still challenging the devil in a game that will never end. His soul forever bound, condemned to gamble for eternity. The game never truly finished. I'm Rob Coakley, and this is Hometown Ghost Stories, Glamis Castle, Angus, Scotland. I must own, as I heard door after door shut after my conductor had retired, I began to consider myself as too far from the living and somewhat too near to the dead. Sir Walter Scott, after visiting Glamis Castle in 1790. Glamis Castle and its grounds cover about 14,000 acres in a lowland valley between the Sidlaw Hills and Grampian Mountains. Construction for the castle began in 1400. About 71 years after Robert the Bruce had taken the area back. Robert II would name Sir John Lyon the Thanage of Glamis, and the area and eventual castle would remain in the Lyon family to this day. The castle itself is beautiful on the outside and inside. However, it is said to be the home for many different ghosts, some dating back to even before the castle itself was built. One of the most popular spirits of Glamis Castle is that of the Grey Lady, believed to be Janet Douglas, who mostly appears in the castle's chapel. Janet Douglas was born in 1498 and married John Lyon, who was the 7th Lord of Glamis. A problem that would arise for Janet was that King James V had intense animosity towards the Douglas family. King James was the stepson of Archibald Douglas, who at one time had the king imprisoned. This would cause a lifelong hatred of the Douglas family for the king, and he would make their lives a living hell. Janet's brother was Archibald, and over the years the king would outlaw her brothers and then try her for treason for helping them. Insufficient evidence was found, and it's said that she was then tried for witchcraft. Needing evidence or a confession, her family was rounded up and tortured until she would confess. Janet was taken to Edinburgh Castle for keeping before being burned at the stake on the castle grounds. Since then, there have been reports of a Grey Lady being seen in the chapel of Glamis Castle. One of the more credible accounts was from Lady Granville, who was the sister of the Queen Mother. In the early 1900s, she was playing the piano in the chapel and noticed a woman enter wearing a gray dress. Lady Granville didn't stop playing but took notice of the woman in the intricate clothing she was wearing, not noticing anything odd. As she continued to play, the sun broke through the clouds and shined on the woman, and Lady Granville noticed that she could see right through the woman in gray. Lady Granville stated that she was still not scared and finished her song, noticing that by her last keystroke, the woman had vanished. Another royal sighting was by Lady Granville's nephew, who was also the 16th Earl of Strathmore. The Earl, upon entering the chapel one day, saw the woman in gray. She was kneeling and praying and appeared to be in a great deal of sorrow before she simply vanished. One of the more unsettling stories from Glamis Castle is the fate of members of the Ogilvy clan. In 1486, while in conflict with the Lindsay clan, this group of Ogilvy members approached Glamis Castle in search of refuge. The Earl promised to harbor them and invited them in. He brought them through the castle to a room where he told them to wait and he'd have dinner and drinks brought to them while they figured the situation out. As the Earl left the room, he locked it, with it never being unlocked again. Over the coming days, screams of help came from the room until eventually the cries stopped. That area of the castle was deemed off limits to most of the staff for years. Decades later, the current Earl heard voices and cries coming from that same room. He gathered a few of the castle's servants and had them open the door that had been locked for many years. As they entered, they were hit with an odor and a sight that knocked the Earl back. Terrified by what he had seen, he ordered the room to not only be locked off, but bricked up. The screams for help have been heard to this day, many believing that the clan is trapped in that room for eternity. One of the most reportedly seen ghosts of Glamis Castle is that of the woman without a tongue. Legend has it that a female servant in the 1500s discovered a terrible secret that the Earl had been hiding. Threatening to expose him, he had his guards cut out the woman's tongue and lock her away. The woman would escape, but quickly would be captured and executed. Since then, the woman has now been seen throughout the centuries in the castle, as well as looking out the windows. She's been described as pale, tongueless, frightened, and appearing to plead for help. A guest of the castle would tell David Bowes-Lyon, the Queen Mother's brother, of an encounter with the woman. He was in the castle when he began to hear heavy walking, that he was able to discern as someone walking with a prominent limp. As he sat in his room, the walking stopped on the other side of his door, and heavy breathing began. The door would go on to open on its own, and he saw a woman that was carrying a sack over her shoulder, and she was heavily disheveled. The woman opened her mouth to reveal that she had no tongue, and then started to walk away, and while disappearing from sight, a blood-curdling scream was heard. The most widely known legend of the castle is that of the Monster of Glamis. This one is a little more recent and dates back to the date of October 21st, 1821. On that day, Lord Thomas Lyon Bowes and his wife Charlotte would have their child Thomas. Unfortunately, their son was born with deformities, and he would pass away on the same day. But as legend has it, he didn't actually die, and was instead hidden from the general public. Beginning in the 1840s, there were reports of a monster being seen around the castle grounds. One such sighting came from a workman who took a wrong turn in the castle one day and saw something haunting that he reported to those in charge of the castle. The very next day, he was encouraged by those in charge to relocate to Australia, with his passage paid by the Earl himself. Several reports by people who lived in the town nearby claim that they saw a human toad. A writer by the name of Wentworth Day in the 1960s visited the castle and was said to be given a description from the family themselves. Quote, "He was the heir, a creature fearful to behold. It was impossible to allow this deformed caricature of humanity to be seen even by their friends. His chest was an enormous barrel, hairy as a doormat. His head ran straight into his shoulders, and his arms and legs were toy-like." End quote. Many believe that this person they referred to as a monster passed away sometime in 1904, and it is believed that he still haunts the castle to this day. A woman staying in the castle by the name of Lady Bond awoke in the middle of the night. As her eyes were adjusting to the room, she heard movement coming from the corner. She looked over and heard the rocking of a body on the wooden floor and heavy breathing. As her eyes began to adjust, she saw a disfigured person that she described as having a crooked body and a large beast-like head with dirty matted gray hair. When her eyes fully adjusted, she described the face as pig-like, and then a noise in the hall broke her gaze. As she looked back, the figure was gone. The castle has been said to carry a secret that was passed down from those who saw over it throughout the years. Many believe it to be the true story of the Beast of Glamis. Claude Bowes-Lyon, the grandfather of the Queen Mother Elizabeth, who inherited the earldom in 1865, reportedly said, "If you could even guess the nature of this castle's secret, you would get down on your knees and thank God it was not yours."
Hello, hello, and welcome into Hometown Ghost Stories, episode number 151. All the way over to Scotland for this one. I'm Jesse Wilkins. I'm joined by Rob Coakley. Hello, Rob.
Every time we cover a haunted castle, it is so hard to get everything in because we're talking about centuries and centuries of stories, but there's a lot to talk about with Glamis Castle tonight.
Yeah, we're in Massachusetts where we find an 80-year-old house. We're like, oh, this house has 4 bedrooms and it's old.
So old.
And meanwhile, you have this thing hundreds and hundreds of years old. Speaking of being hundreds and hundreds of years old, we're also joined by Dave. Hello, Dave.
Happy to be here.
Yes. So back in Scotland for another episode. Phenomenal job trying to squeeze all that stuff into a, I don't know, 15-minute breakdown there. But it was a good one. Good opening story, too. Very cool.
Thank you. Found them all very interesting. Before we get into it, just want to remind everybody to join Patreon because there's exclusive content for the $10 and $20 members. And if you are a $3 member and up, you also get early access to our side content, which coming out this week is a review for the movie Heretic that you can go and listen to right now.
Yes. I want to give a big shout out to everybody hanging out in live chat. Some donations came in. Andrew P came in with a $5 donation. Jeannie R, 10 gifted Hometown Ghost Stories membership. Whisper, also 10 Hometown Ghost Stories memberships, and setting the trend, keeping it going, another Vice with 10. And then Brenda C, who is our RIP of the week, threw in 50 Hometown Ghost Stories gifted memberships. So if you got one, make sure you say thank you, as we say thank you to all of those generous folks who donated. And again, big shout out to Brenda C, one of our most consistent contributors to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brenda. It was very much well earned.
Absolutely. Also, I want to give a big happy birthday shout out to our good friend Inspires. It is his birthday today, and just an absolute legend. Also a VIP on Patreon, has been for a long time. Guest DJ at our live show in October, so that was pretty cool. But a huge shout out to everybody who donated. And again, happy birthday. I think there was a couple birthdays in chat. So happy birthday to all those birthday boys and girls out there, as well as Inspires. So let's hop into some ghost stories about Scotland, huh?
Let's do it. And let's go back to even before this castle was built, which is...
Can we square something away first?
Sure.
There's a lot of people in chat are challenging the pronunciation of this town or this castle name. And I just looked into it and I have answers. So the American pronunciation is Glamis. The Scottish pronunciation is Glams or Glams.
Glams, yeah. So I said that we should pronounce it the way that Scotland pronounces it because it's in Scotland. That's where the castle is. So we will respect the Scottish. We're all wearing kilts right now as well. You can't see because you just have to take our word for it. But we are doing our utmost to respect Scotland by wearing kilts and by saying glams instead of glamis.
So let me get it right. So if it's Scotland, we'll use their pronunciation. But if we're covering something in Romania, where you have Elizabeth Bouteri, who her name is pronounced Erzbit, but you didn't want to say Erzbit, did you? I haven't let this go.
Yeah, well, that's stupid. Nobody wants to be called Erzbit.
Erzbit did.
Erzbit. Yeah, we're not doing that. Yeah, there's a dumb scale. All right, there's a dumb scale where if the real pronunciation is a lot more dumb than what sounds better, then you can't do it. If it's relatively even, then you go with the real pronunciation.
Okay, I like glams or glams.
Yeah, it's tough to do a script and read it though, because you want to say glamis the entire time you're reading.
You wrote the script. Just write the word how you want to pronounce it.
Yeah, that's probably what I should have done.
That's what I usually do.
But I have integrity, so I wrote it as it is supposed to be written. Good. Because I am a journalist. I don't know if you know anything about that. So, all right, let's go back to before the castle was even built, which was in 1400. There's reports of it being built in the 1370s. They might have started construction then, but most reports say that it was built in 1400. But we're going to go back to 1034 because that is when Malcolm II was killed in Glamis. And the connection to that is, have you heard of Shakespeare? Have you heard of Macbeth?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So if you were watching the video, you saw a lot of statues from Macbeth because they believe that Malcolm II was killed the very spot where Glamis Castle was built because there used to be another building there. So grain of salt stuff. We can't confirm that, but one of the original ghost stories from here is that on the very bottom floor, the dungeon, the basement, whatever you want to call it, of the castle, there was a stone spot that blood would appear on, and they couldn't get it out, and they eventually just built a floor over it. How true that is, I don't know. There's no proof of it at the moment, but that is one of the original ghost stories. So there is a connection to Shakespeare and Macbeth with this castle dating back to 1034 and Malcolm II being killed there. So that's how far back we're dealing with, gentlemen. 1034 ghost.
It's far back.
Yeah. As Jesse said, we cover buildings around here where we're like, this place is so old, and the guy that built it is still
Alive.
Yeah.
But he plans to haunt it when he dies, so it's a big deal.
Yeah. So there's so many more stories to cover. We'll try to jump into some of the ones that we covered in the opener. But Jesse, I'd like for you to read the one that you have here on the servant child, because there's some there's some hauntings in this one that are absolutely terrifying to me. There's one thing you can't do as a ghost, and we're going to get into it.
Sure. So this one is the ghost of the young African servant. It is believed that the ghost of a young African servant haunts the Queen Mother's sitting room. He was known for his mischief, and to try and discipline him for his frequent transgressions, he would be told to sit on a stone seat to think about what he had done wrong. On one frigid winter night, he was again made to sit on the stone. Eventually, everyone retired to their beds, forgetting to dismiss the little boy from the seat, and for once he obeyed and remained seated. Sadly, he froze to death during the night and was found the following day still sitting on the stone. That's sad. Today, his ghost, still mischievous, has a habit of sticking out a foot to trip any unwary visitors that as they enter the room. This is coming from greatcastles.com. He's also known to tug on clothing. He's believed to be the ghost responsible for objects that disappear in the castle. There's a child's laughter ringing down the halls. They could attribute that to him as well. And people have also reported being tickled or poked with no one else in the area. Certain rooms, people have witnessed chairs rocking as if a child is trying to climb onto or off of them.
You can't tickle me, bro. As a ghost, we have to set boundaries. And now, because of this story, every time we go do an investigation, we have to enter, and I have to tell the ghost they're not allowed to tickle me.
I feel like just bringing it up might provoke some tickling. I will say this, though. If I'm in the room and somebody else is getting tickled by a ghost, that would be kind of wild to see. Just someone getting tickled without anybody tickling them. Because that reaction is crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope it happens to you. We've just booked our next investigation. I'm going to release that info on where it is in our VIP Patreon after the show tonight, after we finish recording. So if you're part of that, you can check that out. But I'm hoping that when we go there, Jesse, you begin to get tickled relentlessly for hours.
Hopefully it's just by Dave.
Ghostly Dave. What were those fingers, Dave?
That was Tickling Dave.
Tickle
met him?
fingers, obviously.
Be glad you haven't met Tickling Dave yet.
We're all pretty excited about that. So
just real quick, we do have a comment here from Erzbit Young. Says, Rob, I'm going to tickle your toes when I die.
How dare you? How dare you? So, I mean, as funny as that is, the unsettling one is people that have witnessed chairs that start rocking, and they attribute it to it looking like a child is either trying to climb onto or off of the chair.
That's an interesting distinction, because you would think if you see a rocking chair moving, if you think it's a ghost, you would assume that ghost is just sitting it. But I would assume that maybe the chair is just moving forward and holding in that position for a little while and then moving back. That's the only way that I would say it looks like someone's climbing onto it, especially a child.
Yeah.
So it must not be a steady just rocking of the chair. It might have to mimic those motions as
Well,
if someone would climb onto it.
I don't think it's rocking chairs. I just think that the chairs are rocking. Like,
oh,
like forward and back and like
Oh
sort of
yeah, it
like
never said
twisting.
rocking chairs. I guess
Yeah.
I guess they have now become rocking chairs, but in certain rooms, people have witnessed chairs rocking as if a child's trying to climb onto or off of them. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a
I mean,
development.
in theory, any chair can be a rocking chair if you try hard enough, I
Yeah,
guess.
if you're partying, you party hard. Start
Yeah.
rocking all the chairs.
Yeah. So that is another one of the ghosts of Glamis Castle that is a bit spooky. And his main thing though is he trips people. Like, all right, you little dick. I understand you froze to death. That sucks. But don't be an asshole. Just because
Yeah.
you're dead, don't try to trip me.
Why are you tripping?
Yeah. Gotta stop tripping, bro.
Mhm.
All right, Dave, do you want to? So there is I found a ghost story that was written in 1912, and I'm going to have Dave read that story for us. But this just goes to tell how many haunted tales there are about this place because I couldn't find anything else with this story, but I thought it was a really cool ghost story.
So this is 1912, and in his book Scottish Ghost Stories, author Elliot O'Donnell writes of a haunting that was witnessed by a Miss McGinney in the late 19th century. Traveling in late autumn, she arrived at Glamis, what she described as the most frightful blizzard. Happy to be inside the warmth of Glamis' 16-foot castle walls, 16-foot thick castle walls, her bags were taken to her room in the oldest part of the castle known as the Square Tower. During that evening's dinner party, the conversation between guests soon turned to ghosts, and in particular, the hauntings associated with Glamis. Although she was enjoying the topic, she did take the stories with a healthy pinch of salt and paid no heed to them. The evening drew to a close, and Miss McGinney retired to her room, her long day's travel having caught up with her. She soon fell soundly asleep. As the evening had gone on, the blizzard had abated, the winds had died down, and all was still. Now the gloom of the night had passed. Her room was bathed in moonlight and was deathly quiet. Sound asleep, she was shortly awoken by a loud noise. Given she'd been in a heavy sleep, she took a few seconds to find her bearings. Aware that there had been a commotion, but unsure what it was or where it emanated from, she strained to see in the darkness to help her understand her situation. As she gradually came to, she couldn't shake the feeling she wasn't alone in her room, and in her words, quote, "I became afraid. An irrepressible tremor pervaded my frame. My teeth chattered and my blood froze." She sat upright in her bed, listening intently to the silence. Soon she could hear a noise in the distance, a noise she described as the footsteps of someone wearing chainmail, footsteps that were drawing closer. She could now hear clanging and banging noises with the footsteps. She realized what she was hearing was a fight with an aggressor and a defender. Then she realized the noises were happening directly outside the door to her room. It sounded to her like a battle to the death between two skilled warriors. She could hear weapons clash, the sounds of two men moving back and forth, vying for supremacy on the wooden floor as they evaded blows and attacked each other, and she could hear grunts and heavy breathing from the effort of the battle. She then heard what she claimed to be the sound of an axe cutting through a helmet, the sound of a body slumping against her door, and then the body being dragged away. After a moment, she opened the door, but she saw nothing. No trail of blood, no fallen warrior, nothing. And that's from erieedinburgh.com.
Yeah.
This is a unique haunting and very, very descriptive.
Yeah. Two things that really stood out to me in terms of the description where she said that her blood froze. Like that's how still she became. And also the sound of an axe cutting through a helmet was also super descriptive and
Oddly
just,
specific.
yeah, very, very oddly specific.
What's the difference of an axe chopping through a helmet and a sword chopping through a helmet?
Hmm.
As far as sound goes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. We should test it.
Yeah, we have to test out. Dave, do you have any helmets?
Yeah.
Andrew probably does.
Andrew does. Andrew has a full suit of armor. You know what was disappointing was we went to a King Richard's Fair this year, the first time in a long time. So it's a Renaissance fair. Goes on, in the fall season out here in Massachusetts. It's a good time. And we were supposed to go for my son's birthday because my youngest, he's into knights right now. So he's, that's his thing.
shifted from pirates to knights. Look at that. We worked pirates into the Scotland episode. Anyways, so we're like, all right, for his birthday, we'll take him. Anyways, it got rained out. And Andrew, Captain McSlugs, as some of you know him as, he has a full suit of armor, not just something that looks like a suit. It's not a Halloween costume. It's a legitimate suit of armor that you need a scribe to help you put on. So you got to buckle on every single piece, just like a real suit of armor. So on the rain date, when it got canceled, he had put on the full suit of armor to go to King Richard's Fair. And then we went to go pick him up, and he had since taken the armor off. We ended up just going out to eat instead. So the following week, or a couple weeks later, we used those tickets again. We're like, all right, now we're going to go. Hopefully it doesn't get rained out. And Andrew's like, all right, I'll meet you there. And he didn't even bother. With the suit of armor. Biggest letdown. Meanwhile, I'm in full costume, and Andrew's just sitting there in his North Face. I look like a jackass.
Well, now, the next time he comes and investigates with us, he has to wear the full suit of armor. And the entire investigation.
Yep. And then we have to axe him in the head or sword him in the head and see which kind of sound it makes and see if there's any difference.
Yeah. Just have that recorded for that for sure.
Recorded for what? The dark web? Why'd that video get pulled from YouTube? It was just a murder.
For our How to Make a Ghost series.
Ah, yes.
That we're going to put on YouTube. So that is Squire,
not a scribe. Thank you, Brodad, for correcting that. I thought I had that right. Boom.
Yeah.
Very good.
So that was another one of the chilling ghost stories. I also wanted to highlight it because it takes place in the Square Tower, which I didn't bring up in the opening, but a lot of the hauntings happen in the Square Tower of this castle. Not that there's not hauntings all over the place, but a lot of the times when you're looking into ghost stories for here, you are going to see that the Square Tower is mentioned as well. Let's talk about vampires.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know if you guys were ready for this, but there are some vampire legends that happened at Glamis Castle. And there's two specifically. We're going to talk about the servant girl one at first. And this is a legend from centuries ago, apparently, where there was talk that they caught a servant girl feeding on another one of the servants. And they captured her.
Oh, I thought you said it was a surfer girl. I was like, wow, they were really crazy back then.
Yeah, just really surfing in Scotland in the 1300s, 1400s.
Surfing was different in the 1300s. Spelled with an E.
Yeah. Touche. So they caught her doing this. They brought her to a room and they bricked her up, which is something that seems to have happened quite a bit in this castle, just bricking people up and locking people in rooms. Legend states that she is still there to this day, and that it's believed she's escaped twice but been caught and put back in the room. To which, if you're a vampire, if you get caught once, fine. Shit happens, right? Like, things happen. Maybe you get caught. You can't escape twice as a vampire and get caught both times.
No.
Like, unacceptable.
Got to be better.
You are the worst vampire if you get caught twice.
Vampire in training.
Technically 3 times. You get caught 3 times by the same people? Come on.
Also, if you're catching a vampire 1 time, 2 times, on the third, like, why are you allowing this to continue? You're burning people at the stake for much less. They are. So it's what you're catching them and be like, got you again. Don't do that. You got to put a stop to it. If you catch it, you're terrible at this. Great at catching them.
Yeah. Like, we want to burn her at the stake, but she takes care of all of the mice in the castle.
She's so good at surfing.
Can't do it. So that is the vampire tale. The other one with the vampire tale is associated with the monster of Glamis Castle, where sometimes that turns into a tale of vampire, but it's very much not the norm with the story. Just some people have thrown that in there, and I don't think it has any bearing at all with the story of the monster of Glamis. So that is the other part of the vampires. But I do want to talk more about the monster of Glamis Castle, because
so do I. We got a frog monster,
a frog monster, a pig face monster. There's a lot of different tales, and it's like the most recent account of anything that's happened at this castle, which is still over 200 years old. This still happened at least 200 years ago. For it to be the most recent thing that's happened at this castle related to the paranormal. But I have some more information on this as well that I wanted to share before we really dive into this. So, Sir Horace Rumbold, a British diplomat, tried on several occasions beginning in 1877 to unravel the mystery of the monster of Glamis. He wrote about the frustration of countesses of the castle who were also frustrated by not knowing the secret of the castle. And I think this is an important time to just sort of reemphasize that there is legend that there was a secret of Glamis Castle.
Well, that's not true because I have actual footage of this monster. And let's take a look at the picture now. So there's our there's his minions.
Yeah, it looks like the worst game of Angry Birds I've ever seen in my life.
I know. It does look like the Angry Bird pigs.
Yeah.
Scary stuff.
Yeah, very scary stuff. So there is a secret attached to the castle where allegedly once an earl of the castle turns 21, the story is passed down to them, and it seems to have been lost in time at some point, though. And it's believed that the monster of Glamis Castle was the actual story. I'm not sure. It seems like it's definitely possible, but it could be an older secret as well. And that is what and they never told a soul, so they didn't even tell their wives, so that's why there's that frustration. And one of these countesses even told Sir Horace about an event that happened in 1850. The 12th Earl's wife asked her guest to aid her in a hunt while her husband was away. The guest began by reasoning that the room probably had a window. Then, when they considered that the coast was clear, Rumbold wrote, somebody hit upon the ingenious device of opening the windows all over the castle and hanging out of each of them a sheet, a towel, or a pocket handkerchief. The Earl added, soon innumerable white signals were fluttering in the summer breeze when Lord Strathmore unexpectedly returned. So while they were putting everything out the windows, the guy shows back up. The Earl bitterly upbraided his wife and quickly divorced her. It is true that the marriage ended and that the Countess ended her unhappy life in Italy, but the results of her experiment remain disputed. Some accounts of the incident suggest that one tightly locked window in the tower remained unmarked by a towel. Others say 4. And that came from the Smithsonian Magazine. So kind of a smart way to do that is to figure out which rooms don't have a door by putting something outside each of the windows and seeing if there's a window that doesn't have anything outside of it. But this place is massive, man. So the amount of time it would take,
it's a lot of windows.
It's a lot of windows. So, and how do you?
I'm trying to wrap my head around rooms without doors.
Well, they bricked them up.
Oh,
so,
gotcha.
Or trap doors.
Gotcha.
I promise you, this room is great. You have to trust me.
Yeah. So that's what they did with the Ogilvy room as well, which maybe we'll talk about a little bit more. But the clan that they locked in a room, they ended up eventually bricking up that room so that you couldn't even access the doorway to get into it.
There's a real estate tip. If you were ever selling your house and you really want to maximize your profit on the sale, you just tell the realtor that it has not 4 rooms, it has 7 rooms. Just 3 of the rooms don't have doors, so you won't be able to find them.
Yeah, figure it out.
Yeah, some extra square footage there.
Yeah. On one occasion, a young doctor who was staying in the castle professionally found on returning to his bedroom that the carpet had been taken up and relaid. He noted that the mark of the carpet was different at one end of the room. By moving the furniture and raising the carpet, he laid bare a trap door, which he forced open and found himself in a passage. This passage ended in a cement wall. The cement was still soft, leaving the impress of a finger. He returned to his room and next morning received a check for all of his services with the intimation that the carriage was ready to take him to the station for the first train. So, dude found something that he supposedly wasn't supposed to.
Actually, we can roll some footage here. We actually found what he found that he wasn't supposed to. Very scary stuff.
Yeah.
It was the frog monster again.
Yeah. Great.
The best part about this image is they put a castle on top of his head too.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
Very
scary stuff.
Yeah. So that is, we have multiple different reports while they were looking for the monster of Glamis, where different people that worked at the castle sort of went into areas they weren't supposed to. And as soon as they did and people found out, they were relieved of their services. One of them was sent to Australia. They were like, not only are you not going to work here anymore, we're going to pay for you to go to lovely Australia and never come back.
You know, who did come from Australia was the devil in the opening story. I attempted to do a Scottish accent. It came out very Australian.
It worked. It worked for the story. So the monster of Glamis, I don't know if it's real or not. There seems to be some steam to this that
it's not real.
Well, I think that like there being an actual quote unquote monster isn't real, but the fact that it revolves around the Earl having a deformed child that they said passed away and they sort of hid wouldn't be the first time that a royal family did this, whether it was completely hid them. Sometimes they would hide them in psychiatric wards as well. So
did you ever play The Witcher 3?
Yes.
There's a scene, or there's one sequence that kind of reminds me of where he has to go help the king find his deformed child that got away and turned into a monster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sounds a lot very similar to that.
Yeah,
I do wonder if they based that off this legend.
Could have been.
I mean, there's a few legends like this, but people were seeing things. Like there are a lot of reports. I think there's a lot of bogus reports. A lot of the townspeople seeing stuff doesn't seem to check out quite as much, but people working around the castle being sent away. And this was allegedly the secret of the castle that was passed down, that the actual heir to the castle was this quote unquote monster, unfortunately, that they called him, that they sort of hid in the castle. And it wasn't even the job of the family to take care of him. It was the job of the person who ran the castle to take care of him, from the way that the legend goes. And they believe that Thomas, who would be the monster, would have died in.
We'll call him Tyrion. Just
wow. He died in 1904, and I think that's why the legend doesn't, or the secret of the castle doesn't get passed down as much anymore, because the secret sort of died.
Yeah. That is interesting.
But did this frog monster ever actually die, though? Very scary stuff.
Yeah.
Remember to get that one tattooed on my back.
Yeah, I will make sure you get that tattooed at some point in time. So it's definitely a possible thing with this castle. I'm not sure. My one problem is, although I guess we've seen this before. So their child that allegedly died on the day that he was born, they named him Thomas. They later named another child Thomas, which is just something that they were doing in this time frame. We've talked about this on different episodes where they just reuse the name, Yeah,
and then they renamed the other one Not As Good Thomas.
Yeah, basically. That's what they do. So that is the legend of the monster of Glamis. I thought it was very different. They think that he is still haunting this place. We had that ghost story of the woman that saw like a disfigured creature in the corner that ended up disappearing at one point in time.
Whatever image you generated there was far more scary than the images I just generated. But whatever you got in that episode, if you folks if you're listening to the audio version of this and you haven't seen the video, this is one to go back and watch the video for. Some really cool footage, but also some very creepy images created there for this one. That one was a particularly frightening one. So nicely done.
Yeah. I was dealing with a lot of the same issues you're currently dealing with, and I will tell you my workaround to that later.
My workaround was in the prompt. I wrote very stupid drawing, which is why
Oh.
these all came out ridiculous. But I can see why.
Yeah. So very, very scary stuff. Very tragic. If any of that is even a little bit true, like a lot of tragedy going on there, a lot of residual energy that could be happening.
Did you say King James resided at this castle for a period? Did I hear you mention that?
He didn't reside at the castle, but so the Douglas family, we'll just jump into the Gray Lady at this point. So the history on that is the Douglas family married into the Lyon family, who was the one that owned this castle. So it was Janet Douglas, I believe, was her name, or was it?
It was either that or Thomas.
Yeah. So she married into the Lyon family. Her brother Archibald was the stepfather of King James. So King James V. And King James V grew up hating Archibald. There was a falling out of him. I don't know if he was trying to usurp the king or what the actual situation was, but he imprisoned King James for a time period. And King James held a grudge against not only Archibald, but the entire Douglas family after that. So he didn't just want to see Archibald suffer. He wanted to see the entire family suffer.
What year was this? Do you know?
You're
catching in the 1980s.
I have it in the opening. I don't remember the time offhand. She I want to say 1457 is ringing out in my head. That's when she was executed.
Okay.
I believe she was executed in 1457.
So not like the King James that everyone knows about.
No, but there's 100 King Jameses because
there were a lot of them. He didn't get pissed off and write a Bible. That's an interesting point from Barbara. Says the frog monster revealed at the end of The Maze, 1953, which revealed that he was actually a Scottish lord born like an amphibian and insisted on living in a maze due to his weird appearance. I do wonder.
Sounds like that may have taken some inspiration from Glamis Castle as well. So might want to give that a little watch. So yeah, the Gray Lady. So that's what happened with the Douglas family. Basically, King James hated them, but he was unsuccessful with like doing anything against Janet Douglas there, because he had to prove stuff in court and he couldn't prove anything. So eventually he just accused her of witchcraft, and he still couldn't prove that. So
that's wild, because you didn't have to do a lot to prove witchcraft, especially in Scotland. We mentioned it briefly in a recent episode, how, and I happen to be wearing my Salem shirt today, but how, everyone knows of the Salem witch trials, but you take that and it's 100-fold at least over in Scotland and England, where they were executing tons of people that were accused of being witches over there.
Yeah. So, and for the king to not be able to make that charge stick, he ended up having to imprison her entire family, torture them, and the only way that he would let them go was if she basically said that she was guilty of witchcraft, and then they burned her ass at the stake because she said she was. So
police practices haven't changed much since then.
Yeah, basically
just beat it out of them.
Yeah. So she lived at Glamis Castle, and now her ghost is mostly seen in the chapel there. She shows up in a gray dress, and members of the royal family have seen her. Multiple members of the royal family have seen her and reported it and talked about it, which I think is really cool, because I don't know of a ton of the royal family that talk about their ghost stories. So for them to be open about this and to actually acknowledge that they've seen spirits within the castle, I think is a really cool wrinkle to Glamis Castle.
It is some very interesting stories.
All right. So the King James I was referring to earlier, King James VI, actually did have a tie to this castle. He redesigned it in the early 1600s, like the 1620s. And I think this is interesting because before he wrote, or he had the King James Bible written, he actually wrote one of the the most well-known books on demonology, and which was basically a philosophical dissertation of necromancy and black magic and things like that. And this actually heavily influenced him when during the witch trials that followed that shortly thereafter. So there was a lot of dark magic going on with King James during his time at that castle before he had the Bible written.
Very cool.
What a spooky detail.
Creepy.
I did not come across that one when I was researching this castle. But again, there's so many details about this castle that I don't think we're going to hit on everything that's happened here. And there's got to be so much that has happened in this castle that we don't even know about. And it goes to some of the legends. And the creepier one is the tongueless lady that shows up. And from all reports, she's sort of the most seen ghost of all of these. Is this it looks like a servant from the 1600s or something like that, shows up with no tongue, carrying a sack, sometimes like a heavy sack, disheveled, and then disappears, and you just hear like a blood curdling scream.
It makes me think that it was someone, like you said, maybe a servant that worked there that was planning on escaping. So the heavy sack could have been like their belongings, and they were going to try to get out, and they're like, no. And because it definitely seems like this ghost is trapped in the castle, where they see it around the castle. They all see it, also see it in the windows, looking like it's pleading for help. Like it seems like this spirit wants to get out, and it really sucks that its ghost is trapped there in the afterlife, because it seems like what they wanted in life, they're still trapped there in death.
Yeah, it goes along with the story, right? The legend is that this was a servant that caught the Lord Glamis doing something, or saw something she wasn't supposed to see, threatened to tell somebody. So he cut out her tongue, locked her up. She actually got free for a minute and started to escape, but they captured her, and then they executed her when they captured her the second time. So that completely ties into your story.
Little did I know that was the exact story. Right.
Yes.
Hey, somebody pays attention.
Yes. Thank you for listening to the opening.
I do what I can.
So she's shown up quite a bit. People have seen her in the hallways. They've seen her in rooms. Like, as you said, Jesse, she's seen in windows as well, which is terrifying. And not only can she not escape, when you see the size of this castle, it's going to take you a long time to escape from seeing a ghost. You're not just running out the front door and
a lot of windows.
I mean, by all means, jump out one if you want, but like to get out of the castle is going to take you some time, and you're probably going to get winded before you even get to the front door. You're going to be a little tired.
Or just bring a hang glider and jump out a window.
Yeah. Climb down one of the things that they hung out the window.
You guys don't bring hang gliders on historical tours? Come on. Step it up. Be prepared always.
That is one thing that you can do as well. Let's we've kind of covered everything. Let's talk about the card game with the devil.
Oh yeah.
Which is what really caught my attention when we were covering this episode, and it's the legend of Earl Berde, however you want to pronounce that.
Probably none of those.
Probably none of them. Probably Beatty. Probably just cut out all the middle stuff in it, and that's how you say it. But it's believed that Earl Berde could have been two different people. It's either Alexander Lyon, who was the second Lord Glamis. He died in 1486. But it's more likely that it was Alexander Lindsay, the fourth Earl of Crawford, who died in 1453. So that checks out as well. So before we get into the story of Earl Berde, the Lindsay clan is the clan that the Ogilvy clan was running from. They were the two clans that were battling, and the Lindsay clan actually had an alliance with the Lyon clan that have had Glamis Castle since the beginning. And so when the Ogilvy clan showed up on their doorstep, the Lord Glamis was like, you know what, come inside. And that's why he killed them, because he already had that alliance with the Lindsay clan, and basically told the clan, like, you're all set. We took care of most of their guys here. So so that's why he does check out that it could be Alexander Lindsay, and he could have been there right around the same time as this happened with the Ogilvy clan. That would check out as well. But all reports are that he was a drunk. He was like a tyrant, almost like a mean bastard. And he wanted to play cards on the Sabbath, and nobody wanted to play with him.
Hey, he likes to party.
Yeah. The Earl,
tyranny, alcohol, and gambling.
the Earl of the castle didn't want to play with him, so he was challenging anyone in the castle that would play, and finally challenged the devil himself. And on this stormy night, the devil shows up at the door and accepts his challenge and basically plays him for his soul. And Earl Birdie loses. There's a lot of variations to the story, but the basic gist is they play for his soul. A lot of them include the detail about the servant who tried to see what was going on through the keyhole and was blinded. And instead of showing any compassion, the Earl was pissed off that people were trying to look in on his card game. Basically like, get him out of here.
So grab one of those really strong flashlights and just shine it through.
Yeah, probably.
Laser pointer. Don't shine those in people's eyes. That's what happens.
Was there a version of this story where they were playing the fiddle?
No, there was no Charlie Daniels. But imagine if Charlie Daniels showed up in 1450.
How much cash do you think the devil brought with him?
Oh, man.
He had no intentions of losing.
I would love. Well, you can't buy in. I mean, you can't lose if you don't bring the money to play, right?
Right.
I would love if this version of the story was that the devil showed up, but he didn't bring that much money, so he's like, "That's not even enough for the buy-in." And then he had to leave
with his tail tucked between his legs.
His actual devil tail. I like to think he just goes back down to hell. He's like, "I knew I should have grabbed more cash."
Just dragging his pitchfork.
He's at the ATM.
I like to think he showed up with 10 Bitcoin. He's like, listen, you don't know what this is right now, but
I promise it's gonna be worth something one day.
I promise you.
What's your email? I don't know how Bitcoin's transferred. I don't think it's via email.
Yeah. That actually might be the most boomer thing you've ever said on the show.
I have Bitcoin and I don't remember how I acquired it. Anyways.
So yeah, he loses his soul, and a lot of the versions that I was reading were basically that he disappeared right away, but some of the more grounded stories, I guess you would say, is that he didn't disappear right away, but he was a broken man after this encounter, and as soon as he did die, his spirit began to show up in the castle playing cards for all eternity.
I'd be broken too if I gambled with the devil and lost and couldn't win the $8.25 that he brought from hell.
Yeah, $8.25 in 1450. Inflation, it's got to be $8 trillion, probably. Right?
Eight Bitcoins would probably be.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that is sort of all of the story. Well, not all of the stories, but the majority of the known stories of Glamis Castle. A really cool location, a place that I would love to go check out. I'm into the castle thing. One of my dreams is that we go investigate. The 3 things I really want to investigate before we end the show tonight is is a castle, a lighthouse, and a prison. Those are the 3 that I want to do. So that's my wish list.
Sounds like a good one to me.
I'm in for that. I think if I'd have to look at where in Scotland this is, but yeah.
Angus.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like where on the map it is in terms of Scotland. It's not that big. I mean, so
Dave.
Yeah, I would definitely make a pit stop here. I would want to hit Edinburgh.
It's north of Memphis, I think.
Pretty close.
It's Memphis, Florida.
Yeah.
So Very good. Very good. Any reviews? I believe we hit a milestone on reviews this week, didn't we?
Yeah, we finally hit 600 on Apple. So thank everyone for who have given us a review. I do have one review. It's an update from Richard, and it's fitting. He left his first part, so I'm going to read that again just because it ties into this past week. He wrote, picked y'all up on Jericho's podcast. No lie, I'm not a fan of horror themed anything, be it movies, shows, etc. But since I heard the Sally House story on Jericho, I've legit been binge listening to everything you guys have. I can't stop. The format is awesome and every episode is hauntingly addicting. Then his update was 2024 was the hardest year of my life. I found myself unable to listen to music on my drives to work. This podcast was the escape and distraction from real life that I needed to get through the situation. I can't be more appreciative of this podcast, the host, and community. Somewhere down the line, when they come back to Texas, I hope to get the host around for what they do. Thank you, Rob, Dave, and Jesse. So,
Awesome.
always,
Thanks.
yeah, love hearing stuff like that. And that review, words like that, means more to us than a drink. It's not that we don't want to get a drink with you, but that shows us the level of appreciation right there. But we would love to get a drink as well.
Don't cancel the drinks. Okay, thanks. Very good. Dialed that back. Big happy birthday shout out to Aussie Tiger as well. That was the one I was trying to remember whose birthday it was. That's awesome. Let's thank our VIPs real quick, kicking it off with Ryan F. Justin, actually, let me give us a little refresh real quick, just in case people updated their names.
Yeah.
Wow. Now it's Ryan F., Justin W., J Gooch 725, Jennifer A., Jeremy M., Casey W., Brandina 77, Kathy F., Kitten Clown Dozer, Ghost Nurse, JP, another Vice. Dave has a new kangaroo onesie with a bottom flap. West Virginia coal miner. Tess. Jesse can't throw rocks.
Can't.
What's that reference to? I could throw rocks. I've thrown rocks before.
Can't
Couple of
throw
rocks.
t-shirts.
Can't throw t-shirts. I could
Definitely can't throw t-shirts.
I can't throw t-shirts. Yeah. The problem was they weren't bundled, but if they were, we would have been knocking over beers. So I'll throw rocks next time. Prove this person wrong. Kate and Steve M. Not you, Kate and Steve M. You just happen to be next. They were in the front row catching all the shirts. Now they're going to pelt them with stones. Sharon V. Glitter Tees came in from Washington. Kelly C. Nick. Liz Young. Donnie N. Inspires Gaming. Happy birthday one more time to Inspires. Allison V. Robert H. Anna C. Jeannie. Mom and Pops W. Father Squatch the Elder. Father Squatch the Elder. Lisa J. Casper, the not so friendly shadow figure. Thanks so much for being VIPs once again. Huge shout out to our RIP of the week, Brenda C. And let's keep it moving with our Warren's Ward, starting with Angelic Insanity. The devil himself created Australia. Look at its animals. They want to kill you.
Fair.
Fair. That's fair. Degenerate Gambler, Voodoo Ghost, who shouldn't have hit on 19. Jamie E. Nick M. T-Cat, Whisper. Jeremy M, Beth C, Rachel G, Sarah B, Her Lady Spookship, Sloshed and Oshkosh, Julie Gooley, Eugene M, Just Simply Colby, Kath Q, D C, Chris Connolly, LBPS founder, Next, HTGS guest, The Other Rachel B, Sarah Cook, Zeta Chimera, Janice G, Lily, Anthony T from the 603. I had fun with that. Vampire Sandpaper on Rob's Toes. The little devil, this little devil went down to Georgia. Rob will be in the next that's supposed to be in. Rob will be in the next hot dog end eating contest. I did great. We did great. Yeah, Rob will be in the next hot dog end eating contest. Seth on guitar as well. Thank you so much for being part of the Warren's Wards. And finally, we'll hop into the Ghost Pirate Mafia.
Real quick, based on that little thing, I have found out that I have to do another hot dog eating contest this year. And I'm not thrilled about it, but
we'll have to clip some footage for Patreon there. That'll be fun. Cora H, Grimby, D, the Lobster Dancing Banana Land Dinosaur Monster, Susan C, Just Ghoulie, Witchy Kitty 416, Deb 62, Karen L, Michael M, Amber R, Brent C, Mrs. Nardozzi, Shane O'Mac, Joe, Shay, Trevor S, Christina S, Kate C, Kelly C, bloop, bloop. Crazy Legs, Cowboys are the worst franchise ever. Mother McTibbles tucking her herd of ghost children into Rob's bed. Sweet Dreams, Rob, Miss Macabre, Michelle, Naroku, Cold Warrior. There is a baby Youngstown pizza on the way. D from H-Town, Meta A, Monster Mom 04, Wicked Alley, Dark Snark. It makes me sad that humans have free will, yet they use it to live in England.
Oh, damn.
What do you have against England? England's
Shots
not bad.
fired. Yikes.
I wouldn't live in London. That's a little too chaotic for me. But the rest, I mean, actually, London's a great time. Yeah, I got nothing bad to say about England. Megan S, Morgan S, Arcade Hunters, Wayne C. Rob likes to clutch musty pearls between his toes. Crystal Quinn, aka not a Rob fan. Thick Boy Freddy's mama was. Baby mama was definitely yeeted. Hopefully his mother also wasn't yeeted. Alicia E. Thick Boy Freddy can't wait to send off Rob's extra haunted and cursed gift from the Clown Motel to him. Hey Siri, laugh at Rob. Didn't hear me that time. That's good. All hail King Coakley, ruler of the frog people, lord of the pond lands, master of toes. Oh, hail
So good.
King-
So good
Sorry.
until the end there.
I have to do it again because I actually mispronounced one of the words. All hail King Croakley. Croakley is important.
Damn.
Ruler of the frog people, lord of the pond lands, master of toes. Nice. I've been playing Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 all day today. Sam from Nepal, Joe R, Al Capone, Huggy Bear, Bert and Ernie, Burnt Bertha's Birch's Burgers. I don't think I said that correctly, but I liked it. I said it with confidence. We're going to roll with it. Solar Flare. Next up, let's go with Mariah M, Kiralee J, Rachel B, Cody G, Hoopily Whoopily, Bridge Witch, and Dave Wilkins. Thank you so much for being on Patreon. $3 a month will get you there. You unlock early episodes, ad-free episodes. So if you're an audio listener and you're sick of commercials, well then, join on Patreon. You get a complete episode completely ad-free. And, that's the good stuff. Also bonus content and all sorts of goodies. Discount codes, merch, new merch coming soon. I think I'll probably give a sneak peek to the new shirt design to Patreon members soon.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, we're gonna mock up a few of them, but we have one of them that's designed, kind of ready to launch. So we'll keep people posted on that. Anything else before we? I
want to give a big shout out to our moderators, Tess, Steph, and Papa Squash. They do a lot of work behind the scenes, and we appreciate them, and they're awesome. So shout out to them.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes, they have earned it for sure. Okay, I think that'll pretty much do it. Join us on Friday. What are we dropping Friday? Movie review.
Friday is the Heretic movie review. Make sure you go to Talk is Jericho. Listen to us talk about the Hinsdale House with Chris Jericho, which was a really fun episode for us to do. So we were on there Friday. So if you look for that in podcast feeds, I know you've heard us talk about it here, but you can hear us talk about it with Chris as well. So it was a fun time.
Hell yeah. So go check that out on your favorite podcasting platform. Big shout out to Chris Jericho again. And that'll do it. We'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.
Peace.